Hey, and welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast. Today we are joined by Shawna Newman with Skip Blast. Shauna is a veteran website builder. As a matter of fact, she's been building websites full time since 2008. She currently has 17 websites in her portfolio, which she keeps around that number continuously. And so she's got a wealth of knowledge about building websites and what's working in the industry today and how to build websites. We go and really use a case study that she's been doing for about a year now and use that as the foundation of our conversation. She has a website that she started about a year ago on an aged domain, and she's published around 400 informational only articles on this site. And the site is now about a year in, making roughly $1,000 a month. And so we talk through everything that she did on this specific site, her niche research, how she picked out the domain, the first steps she took on the site, the keyword research approach she takes. Specifically, she goes into depth about the importance of topical clusters and how to build those out. We talk about her approach to content and this informational play where normally she does mostly affiliate content. And so she has a lot of great insights to share about how this site does with informational content in comparison to her other sites that are mostly affiliate related. She talks a lot about internal linking and how she focuses on that a lot more than she focuses on external links. We talk about monetization. She has a lot of really interesting insights on how she monetizes on this site versus others, some great RPM hacking advice. And then we talk about what's up next for this site. She's going to completely pivot and going to go in a little bit of a different direction. I'll let you listen into the podcast to hear more about that. All in all, great interview with Shauna, a veteran of the website building space, and I think you're going to love it. Welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman, and today we are joined by Shawna Newman with Skip Blast. Shauna, welcome.
Hi, happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Where are you joining us from today?
I'm actually living back in Las Vegas after spending 2 years living abroad in the Netherlands.
Oh, wonderful. How was that?
Crazy, but fun.
Were you there during a lot of the pandemic, or did you get back?
Yeah. I actually chose to move there because it was a great location to travel across Europe. And then the lockdown started, so it was not the ideal situation.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, welcome back. Thanks for coming on board today. There's so many things that I think we're going to be able to dive into today in terms of your site building and your portfolio of websites that you have created and done over the years. But why don't you give us a little bit of background on how you got into site building and maybe your history in that?
Yeah, sure. So my undergrad is in journalism. So I have a history of starting out as a freelance writer. And I've been in this industry for what seems like forever. So I started with made for AdSense sites. And then over time, I transitioned into focusing on sites full time and no more freelance writing. Just pure affiliate play is what I've been working on mostly. So, and right now I have, I think, 17 sites still in my portfolio. I've always had a rather large portfolio because I get bored easily. So
17 is a large number. That's a big number.
Yeah.
And so how long have you been building sites for?
I think I went full time in 2008, but I started before that. So
wow. Okay. Yeah. So quite a while.
Yeah.
You've seen all the updates from Panda and Penguin and article spinning, and you've been around for everything.
PBN crackdown, everything.
Yep. PBN crackdown. I know that was a big deal. I know one of Spencer's sites got caught up in all that mess.
Yeah. I actually bought PBN links from him before that. So
really?
That service he promoted. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So 17 sites, that's a decent number to manage and maintain, even for someone full time. Are you doing that mostly on your own? Is there a team behind you?
It's mostly me. This year, I've actually recruited my wife to help me because she is a filmmaker and writer. So I have her mostly like editing content for me and stuff like that. But otherwise, it's just me.
How do you tackle, 17 sites? I mean, is it one where you have like one or two really large sites and they get the bulk of your attention? Or are you trying to spread yourself across all of those? I'm just curious.
I like to kind of focus on different sites by quarter. However, I do have some sites that get attention every quarter. And I'm always trying to start at least one new site per quarter in a new niche. I also do a lot of testing to kind of see what works for myself instead of trusting what, other people publish online. So There are just a few sites I'm always working on, but usually I'm seeing a rotation of different sites because I like to kind of hit a site hard with content when I start it and then kind of let it marinate for maybe 3 to 6 months before I come back to it.
Okay. And with that many sites and then the amount of time you've been doing this, I'm guessing you've started some, sold some. Is that something where you sell sites routinely, or do you try to keep it for a long time?
Until recently, I usually have flipped sites, several flips a year. One year I flipped like 14 sites because I had so many at the time. My sweet spot used to be anywhere between $500 to $1,500 a month, and then that's when I would flip it. And then last year, I decided I was going to start holding out and have bigger exits. So now I'm looking for only six-figure exits, so at least $3,000 a month before I flip. So
okay. So there's a clear strategy there. So start sites, build them up, and then hit a point of 500 to 1,500, and then sell them. And then recently you switch. Why the switch to kind of holding on to them longer and growing them bigger?
Where I used to make a pure affiliate play, I've kind of adopted more of a hybrid monetization model. So whenever I start a site now, I explore 100% of the monetization options, even if I know I'm never going to take it. So that could include something like a Shopify site, even though I know I'm not going to do that, just so I know the full potential for a site. And then so I'll start with ads probably and a little bit of affiliate. Then maybe I'll add an info product over time. So as I'm adding these more, monetization streams, I'm getting bigger monthly income, so then I can flip for more.
Okay, and multiples are just skyrocketing.
Exactly.
So, there's that's got to play into it somewhat as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So over at Skip Blast, you've been blogging about a case study you're doing, which I certainly have been paying attention to and wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about today, and that's called Project Tartarus. Am I saying that right? I think I am.
I have no idea. Honestly, I just picked a random name, but Doug Cunnington over at Niche Site Project, he calls it Project Tartar Sauce. So
Tartar Sauce. Well, for those who prefer the fish and chips, you can call it Project Tartar Sauce. So let's talk about that site. I think just for people who are listening, obviously we'll drop a link in the show notes because you have kind of a chronological update that you do every month, and the site's about a year old now, I think, right?
Yeah, it would just hit a year. Yeah.
Okay. And so where can people find that over on Skip Blast? Is it just with a simple link, or is it in the menu?
Right now, it's the most recent blog post because I'm really bad about updating the site. I have a case studies archive on the site.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
If I remember correctly, it's skipblast.com/case-studies. So.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you just never know when people are going to listen to these things. So I try to always, give people a little context if they want to go pop over and follow along. But let's use that as a bit of a model for talking about how you approach building websites. With this site, what was the idea behind it? How did you do the niche research? How did you come up with the topic?
Sure. So I don't know how most people come up with their sites, but for me, I pick a niche first. And then I spend time looking for the perfect domain. So for this particular site, I spent 3 months looking for the perfect domain because I wanted an age domain. So I was just kind of, watching the ODYS marketplace. I saw a few domains come through that weren't quite perfect for me because I really want something that was keyword rich, at least with, the main broad topic keyword in it. What I actually ended up getting was a site that had been in the niche I wanted to go in, but that was an acronym for an organization. But I found no way to make it work for a site just on a general site on the topic. So that's what I went with. And for me, picking a niche for this particular site, this site was going to be my first attempt to have a site exclusively monetized with display ads, because I've always in the past done either a hybrid model or pure affiliate play. So what I did to pick this particular niche is I went to the AdThrive JSON file and I looked at all of the sites running AdThrive to see, okay, let me pick something that I know will do well enough to qualify for AdThrive that I can focus on. So that's how I picked it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a little hack there.
Yeah.
Oh man. And I thought I was ahead of the curve when I could just see the Mediavine banner at the bottom of someone's site. They're on Mediavine, but that's brilliant. So you went and accessed the JSON file and was able to kind of get an idea for which sites presumably obviously are good niches for ad revenue.
Right. And people can add on secondary sites there at only like 20,000 page views, I think.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So what I was looking for was more than one site in that niche to tell me that it was probably a good option.
Oh, that's fascinating. Okay, so you came up with a site that clearly for you, you knew ads were going to be the primary driver of
Right,
revenue. Now,
right.
why were you interested? Because this is a discussion that we have all the time
Mhm,
on the podcast, and
mhm.
people are having like there is a shift to ad revenue first, put
Right.
potentially for a lot of people as opposed to
Mhm.
affiliate revenue. Why were you interested in focusing a site on ad revenue when historically you've been so focused on affiliate revenue?
It was actually just a test for me. I didn't know what to expect focusing on only informational content. And I just wanted to see what would happen,
Okay.
honestly.
So
So,
not
yeah.
necessarily a strategic play. Yeah.
No,
It's
no.
just a test and something like, okay, fair enough. I don't want anyone to go run off and stop building affiliate sites, based
Yeah.
on anything
Right.
necessarily dependent on this. And when you pick a niche, how much keyword research do you do ahead of time
A
before
lot.
you
Yeah.
dive into it and commit to it?
Yeah. So when I started this site, since it took me so many months before I actually found the domain, I had like 300 keywords
Oh
in a
wow.
spreadsheet.
Mhm.
So once I got the domain, I was just ready to hit it with content. So, yeah.
How important I'm thinking of the people who probably maybe haven't started their first site yet who might be listening, or people who are in the middle of that research. How do you balance, or how do you recommend to people to balance the concern of having paralysis analysis and not taking any steps forward up against the need to really make sure you do research really well and spend that time? And it sounds like you spend a lot of time researching the niche. You're accessing JSON files, you
Mhm.
were doing a lot of keyword research. What's the balance for people? Like, do you have any advice on that?
I mean, I know that decision fatigue and paralysis analysis is real. For me, I've been doing this so long, so it was pretty easy for me to just pick a niche I'd never gone into before. Um, my suggestions for people is to pick something that is broad, but not too broad, because you want to have enough to keep writing about for years down the line. I'll talk to a lot of people who had, experience doing just informational content sites before I started this. And they had told me that you needed to be able to do at least 500 articles, and you needed to give it 3 to 5 years to really see the potential of doing that. And so that was how I was approaching this, picking the niche and the keywords that I was going to go after. I'm also a big fan of topic clusters.
Mm,
So when I'm entering a new niche, I really immerse myself in it, trying to think like someone who would be new to this. What would they be asking? What kind of problems might they encounter? So I'm going through like that entire funnel, starting out just learning about something to actually buying something or doing something else in the end.
good. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you talked about an age domain from
Mhm.
ODYS. Is that do you always start sites on age domains, or is that also something that you were testing?
Um, Primarily, I try to find domains that have never ever been registered before, just so that I know it's clean. These days, though, I've been buying more and more of the age domains as a test. The thing with age domains, though, is you can spend a lot of money and have no results if you don't know what you're doing. So that's something I don't recommend at all to people who are new, just because if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to spend thousands of dollars and have a crap domain. And I know I've done that when I was testing out age domains myself. So it's too easy.
No big deal. Just a couple $1,000s down the drain.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's unfortunate. I'm sorry you had to go through that, but it sounds like you learned a lot about
Oh,
how to
yeah,
pick the
yeah.
right ones.
Yeah. I mean, it was trial and error. So yeah.
We I won't dive into all the messy details of that here today. We had a really great podcast several months back, I think. Spencer interviewed, I don't remember their name, but someone about how to analyze age domains and that kind of thing. So
Mhm.
we'll leave it there and move
Right.
on. But suffice to say, it's important to know how to analyze those before you pick one
Yes.
up.
Yes.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. So you got the age domain, and you had done all the research and whatnot. Talk through kind of the first steps for this site, kind of the setup process and how you go about that first month or so.
Yeah. So as soon as I got the domain, my first objective obviously was just to get WordPress live on it and stuff. I like to start sites out using Cloudways, just like a digital ocean droplet, because that's the fastest hosting that I found. And then I just install things like Cloudflare, WordFence. I use WP Rocket and Imagify, I think is what it's called, that they make as well for serving up the WebP images, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm focused, primarily on making sure I have a fast site. I also use the free version of WordFence to keep things secure. And then I just start hitting it with content. Oh, and I also use the Generate Press Premium plugin with Generate Blocks these days because it's super fast as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just content, content, content. I know a lot of people say, hold your content, don't put it all out at the same time, but I don't really see the sense in waiting. So as soon as I have content that's ready to be published, it just gets published. Whether that means I have 20 articles published on day one and nothing for 2 more days, then that's fine.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask you about that. In terms of content publishing, whenever it's ready, it goes live.
Right. Yep.
It's fine. Yeah. Okay. It sounds like you keep things pretty light and lean. Generate
Right.
Press. Doesn't really sound like much of a page builder using blocks from Generate Press Premium.
Right.
What kind of emphasis do you put on site speed out of the gate? Do you come back and do it later? How important is it in your website building process?
I try to do it out of the gate, and that includes, making sure that I use Photoshop. So I do the save for web to minimize the size, then I upload it, and then Imagify makes it even smaller. So it's just kind of like part of my process from day one.
Yeah. And how much content are you trying to, well, at least with this website, how much content were you publishing in the first month or so?
I think I hit it with around 30 or 40 posts in the first month. Today, so about 1 year later, it's at just under 400 posts.
Oh man, congratulations. That's fantastic. Yeah, I was looking through the case study and you were at, 2,800 sessions in month 2, 10,000 sessions in month 3. So clearly some combination of the content and the age domain and everything, it looked like it got going pretty quickly.
Yeah. The content actually indexed surprisingly quickly on this particular domain. And it still does today. That's why I keep hammering it with content. So,
question for you on the content that you start publishing out of the gate. And I'm just curious with this site in particular, and you talked about topic clusters earlier. That's kind of why I wanted to ask this question. Do you tend to take a topic cluster and publish all the articles around that cluster first and then move on? Or do another approach I've heard people say is they go after the really long tail keywords first to try to get some small wins and get some rankings out of the gate and then hit some bigger topics? Like, how do you approach that from a cluster standpoint, especially with a new site?
Yeah, with a new site, I think it's easiest to do your pillar page first, which is your top level keyword, and then hit the low hanging fruit. And then once you've done that, come back and fill in the gaps with the other keywords, just because you're going to get those wins quicker and it's going to keep your motivation up.
How many, is it niche dependent, or how many articles do you need per topic to kind of satisfy the cluster?
Yeah, I think it is niche dependent. Across my sites, I would say the smallest cluster I have right now is about 45 posts. I have another one I'm working on with a different site where I'm at 120 posts and I'm not done. Wow. So it really depends. Big cluster. Yeah.
For a lot of people, that's an entire site. Yeah. Okay. And why is topic clustering so important? Have you, is there some sort of positive result you've seen from it, or is it more of a workflow thing?
I think it's better for ranking. I find that you build your topical authority faster, which requires less backlinks, which if you hate building backlinks like I do, then that's a definite plus. And I also feel like if you're hitting every step in the process of the person who's visiting your site, then they're going to remember that and they're going to come back to your site. So you'll get more repeat visitors, which means you're not actually relying on Google for traffic as much.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
When you're planning out your clusters, when you're doing your keyword research, I mean, it wouldn't be an SEO podcast if I didn't ask you what tools you were using, or, any tips for how to use those tools better?
So Ahrefs is my main paid tool that I use. I also have the Keywords Everywhere extension installed, and I just do a lot of looking at auto suggest as well, just to find things.
Yep. Yeah. Google auto suggest.
Yeah.
How important is keyword volume in that search? I mean, and then if you're in Ahrefs, how important is keyword difficulty? How are you kind of evaluating those things?
I don't really worry about search or keyword difficulty. I just manually look at the SERPs to see if it looks like something I can beat based on DR primarily, or if it's just like forums or Quora or things like that. Now, I feel like people who are new and you're trying to get that pillar page and you need to go after that top keyword, is going to be more valuable for them to probably use a keyword tool, whereas someone experienced like me is just going to know what the top level keywords are going to be.
Right. Did your approach change at all with this kind of ad focused site? Because I'm guessing ad focus kind of probably equals more informational than
Right.
maybe your other sites with affiliate wise, they're more kind of best X for Y review, that sort of thing. Like, did that change any of your approach to keyword research?
I wouldn't say that it changed my approach to keyword research per se, but it did change the way I build sites a little bit in that before I was doing, buying guides that could get as big as 6,000 words. And now I'm doing posts that are under 800 words and they're ranking in the featured snippet. So it's the same, but it's not the same because you can get away with a lot more doing an informational site.
Okay. Have you seen any you're a year in, you're 400 posts in. Are you at all surprised by which ones are bringing the most traffic in terms of, the keyword volume it looked like it was going to be, and then, which articles in your site are bringing the most traffic now, looking back a year later?
I think what's most surprising to me is I did a whole series of keywords on a particular style of article, I guess I'll say. And I thought no one's actually going to be looking this up and go to my site instead of the brand site for this.
Mm-hmm.
And those are my top posts and they get thousands of views a month. And I'm just like, how are people using the internet? So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So they just end up at, well, maybe they want a third party to tell them the
Maybe.
information.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Ah, that's great. Yeah, and again, looking back over some of the case study articles you had, it looks like 80 articles up by month 3, 200 by month 7, 300 articles by month 10. I'm guessing you're not writing all these yourself. Are you outsourced?
Correct. Yeah. I've outsourced the bulk of them. I'm writing the ones that are shorter because, like the similar ones I just talked about, I'm actually using a lot of duplicate content in them, which was one of my tests. Because I was thinking if local SEO sites can get away with this, I wonder if I can get away with this as well. So I'll have posts where just like the main like brand keyword is changed and the intro is changed, but the rest of the article is identical to all of the other articles. And across the board, they all have feature snippets.
That is fascinating. So just the intro is different.
Yep.
And is it because the answer is pretty much the same for every brand query, I guess that we would call it in the space?
Right. Yeah. So it would be something like this. This isn't my niche, but let's say I had a site that focused on opening hours of restaurants. So you would have your article title like, what time does Giordano's close or something like that? And then you would change out Giordano's with another restaurant.
Oh, that is really interesting. Yeah. Man, oh man. Yeah, I saw a recent report that Google had talked about how basically that e-commerce pages were getting, like people were adding so much content to e-commerce pages, trying to make them unique. And they basically were like, you don't need to do that. You're overthinking it. We don't need that much information. You don't need like a hero post on this e-commerce page. I wonder if it's one of those things where people just, it's okay to have that kind of content when it's such a simple query.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that or if it's because it does target real brands. So maybe the algorithm is a little confused that it's not thinking it's an e-com site when it's not really. I don't know.
It's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. That's fun. That's a fun little thing you discovered there.
Yeah.
When it comes to, you writing versus outsourced writing, I mean, what are your preferences? There's, you can go with like a writing agency. You can hire someone. You can hire someone in the niche versus someone kind of more generic. I mean, how important is all that?
Honestly, I prefer writing myself because I've had some bad experiences with some of the more well-known agencies giving me content that they basically copied a competitor who was maybe on page 3 and just changed a few words to pass Copyscape. So I try to write as much as I can, but of course, I'm only one person and I can't clone myself, unfortunately. So I've been using Writer Access recently because they have a thing where if you find writers you like, you can add them to a team. So then all of your new orders go just to that team. So I've been using that a lot lately at the 6 cents a word rate.
Okay. And yeah, with 17 sites and I'm just doing the math, 17 sites. And while you have 400 articles on this site, that is a lot of articles.
Yeah.
I'm guessing not all your sites are maybe as big as this one, but that's still a lot of content.
Yeah. Most of my sites probably have around 100 to 200 posts. And my biggest site has about 900.
That's a lot of content. So do you enjoy writing or is it something it's like a means to an end?
I actually enjoy it. And I feel like I'm pretty fast at it since I do have that background being a freelance writer and stuff. So, and I mean, anyone who runs their own site knows no one is going to do as good of a job as you can do yourself. So,
You mentioned on one of your case study reports that you hired a cheap writer, and you didn't like what you were getting. It was so kind of, you're actually worried that it might be holding you back from ranking. I'd love to hear more about that and kind of what you mean and how you're evaluating that.
So I'll give you an example that's not the niche that I'm in. So let's say I was giving him articles that were something like best pizza restaurants in Vegas, right? And I would want him to give me maybe like 5 different of the best restaurants. He would spend half of the article like he was writing a Wikipedia page about Vegas. And it didn't matter how many times I told him this is about pizza restaurants, not Vegas. He would do it for every city. So I had to fire him because he just wasn't giving me what I needed.
And you think that content just isn't satisfying the search intent and what Google wants?
Yeah, because I feel like I put it up anyway just to see what would happen. But I feel like if the algorithm is looking at it, is the content more about Vegas or is the content more about pizza restaurants, So
Yeah.
I think it causes some confusion.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I know for me, I've gotten articles back from writers and it's like, it happens a lot with the affiliate kind of content where it's, I'll just stick with your theme, like maybe best pizza sauces, right? And it's the intro and like the first part of the article is pizza sauce was invented in, 1921 in Italy. And since then it's like, if they're searching for best pizza sauce, they know what it is. They're trying to find the best one. Like, stop talking about where it was invented and what makes it. So yeah, it can be really tough to try to get around some of that.
Yeah. It's a challenge. And when you find a good writer, you really have to hold on to them.
Yeah. Oh man, I know. Well, that's probably a topic for a whole other day. how to hold on to good writers before they bolt. I mean, you're a year in where I know we'll talk about Skip Blast a little bit later on and the different things you offer there, but I know one of them is Haro and help a reporter out and, that link building approach. But let's talk about links for this site. You used an age domain at the outset, which certainly has an impact on your link profile in a positive way. What have you been doing for link building with this site?
I've actually done 0 link building. That was kind of the reason I bought the age domain. And the people I had talked to previously who have all the experience that I told you about that with the informational sites, they said the links will come. And I was like, I don't know about that, but we'll see. But they actually have. I'm getting like all kinds of DR90, DR80 links without having to do any outreach. So it's been pretty nice.
Amazing. Wow. So build good content.
Yeah.
And certainly the age domain helped. How many, I don't know, how many root domains, let's go with, maybe do follow, or just what metric, what number of links did it start with this age domain?
I don't remember exactly. My baseline criteria is at least 150 referring domains, with most of them being niche relevant.
That's a good amount. That's a chunk of links.
Yeah.
And you get those links out of the gate. So not only do you have all those links and you don't have to invest in that, but you also you don't have to spend all the time trying to build those.
Right.
So it's a major time saver too.
Yeah. Well, and if you're paying for links like guest posts or niche edits or something like that, those could disappear at any time. You're out the money. You don't have the links anymore. So that's why I kind of shy away from that kind of link building these days.
Have you been doing Haro at all with this site and applying that?
No, I haven't, just because I just wanted to see how the domain would do on its own. So,
and you have a Haro link building agency of sorts.
Yeah.
Should see what it does here. Do you find that? I mean, I am jumping a bit to talk about Haro, but do you find that there's some niches that are better for Haro than others, and some that work better?
Oh, for sure. Just simply because some niches just don't have queries in every email. You could go weeks before you find something. In my experience, we see a lot of success with marketing. So SEO agencies, we do a lot of link building for SEO agencies with Haro, general business type things. So like for e-coms, so you can say you're the CEO of the company and things like that. Fitness is another good one. However, you need to have someone on your team who is at least a certified personal trainer. And if you have someone who can say they're a chef for food, that one's also pretty easy to link build in.
Oh, okay. Jumping away from this site specifically, but just looking across your portfolio of sites, like it's kind of the age old question, but for someone who has 17 sites and has been in this industry for so long, I think you're a great person to ask it to. Like, content versus link building, where do you draw the line? Where do you, and where do you see results come in more from? Is it the content? Is it the links? Is it the combination of them?
I actually published a case study on this not too long ago, a few months back, on Skip Blast, where I have a site that I've had for several years. And so I spent 1 year doing nothing but paying for links for it. And the income rose $900 average for that year.
Okay.
Next year, I spent money on nothing but content. I think I added 150 or 250. I can't remember exactly how many posts to it. And the income went up so much that it would be a multiple of like $26,000 was added to the base of the site or something like that. Like, it was a big increase. And so basically my answer is content, because the growth in this site added more of the bottom line with just content than just links.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a 2-year case study there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I also have a selection of sites that I do monthly updates on as well. And I think it's site number 2 in that monthly update, where I spent 1 year only spending money on links. And then this year I've been only spending money on content, and the income has increased more from the content than the links. And there's always the argument, well, the links age, so maybe that's also responsible.
I was going to ask, but then I thought I wouldn't even go down that road.
Yeah, but I feel like the growth has been so much with the content that I think you can say that even though the links did age some, the content is the clear winner.
Well, it's going to be hard to get a definitive answer anywhere with that. But, right. I mean, that's if you've done it a couple of times now, that's a pretty clear. You have a ton of content on Skip Blast. It's amazing. I don't know how you have time to have 17 sites and put the volume of content out that you have over there as well. I was only diving into this Tartarus case study, but you have a bunch over there. So, well, that's interesting. I mean, in link building wise, I know you talked in one of the updates on this case study about internal linking.
Right.
And so that did catch my eye. What's your approach to internal link building? Because it sounds like you haven't built any external backlinks to this site so far. So what have you been doing for internal links?
Well, that's the thing with topic clusters. So if you're structuring your site's content in topic clusters, you're setting it up easily for lots of internal linking. But even if you're not using topic clusters, I'm always a big fan of internal links. Maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, I tested trying to beat a competitor with one of my sites by only doing internal links instead of buying links, because I had something like 30 something and I only had like 5 outbound, like paid links pointing at it. And I found that for every 3 internal links, it was worth 1 paid link.
Oh.
So, and I'm sure that's like niche dependent, but
right.
That's what I found.
Okay. So if that's the ratio, internal links are very powerful because
yes.
They're very easy to make,
right.
And, so, okay, good. Well, let's talk about, monetization now. You're a year in. Where is the site at? What's it earning? Where are you earning that money from? And how's it doing?
So right now, the bulk of the income is coming from Ezoic. I recently tried to get the site on either AdThrive or Mediavine as a secondary site, but it was actually declined by both for brand safety issues, which was kind of a shock for me because I had always thought that was things like, like violence, guns, and things like that. But I learned that it's actually much broader. So I had to delete several of my top posts. I actually have just reapplied that site as a secondary site, and I'm still waiting to hear. So Ezoic is the primary monetization right now. I have a few affiliate links sprinkled in, but I've built no like buyer guides or anything like that so far. And so a year in, we're at just over $800. I wish it was 18. So it was $800 a month average. And for me, this was my first time building just an informational site. So if I had gone pure affiliate, I would be making thousands of dollars a month. So that's a bit disappointing, but this was all an experiment for me. So, now I know. So I actually have just recently hired niche website builders to produce buying guides for this site every month. So going forward, the focus is going to be on adding all that affiliate links to it.
So you got to the 1 year mark and you're like,
Yeah.
I'm done with this. I want to go back to my affiliate content and my earnings.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like with the foundation that I've built on this site, it'll easily be able to be sold for six figures in the next year.
God, so many questions there. I mean, a lot of people, I mean, even thinking back on Spencer's niche site project 4, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that was, that's both an affiliate and an informational play. I don't think it was earning much more than $800 a month after the first year. So, you know, I think in many ways you're somewhat on track, but it sounds like you get faster results monetarily when you're building affiliate sites.
Right. Well, I'm basing my projections of what it would have been based on the 400 posts, and I've spent about $19,000 on the content, and a little over 2,000 on the domain. So I feel like if I had bought the same domain and done the same amount of content and done it all affiliate, then I think I would conservatively, I would say $3,000 a month, probably more.
And you'd probably gain less traffic, but you'd be making more money.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Speaking of traffic, what's the traffic at on a monthly basis now for that site a year in?
It's just under 40,000 sessions right now. Like I had to delete those top posts, and so it's fallen to about 38,000 right now.
Okay. So, yeah, that's a bummer. You delete those.
Yeah.
And you applied for Mediavine and AdThrive, and I think now you mentioned as a secondary site.
Right,
so you must. I think it's just important to clarify for people listening. So with Mediavine and AdThrive, well, actually, why don't you walk through it? If you already have a site with them, you can apply with a lower threshold on secondary sites, right?
Right. Yeah. So with Mediavine, normally your second site has to also be 50,000 sessions. However, if you have a site with them that's more than 100,000 page views that you could potentially move to AdThrive, they lower your secondary site requirement to 20,000 sessions.
Like AdThrive.
Yeah. And so AdThrive, you need 100,000 for your first site for page views, which is different than sessions. And I think your secondary site is either 20,000 or 30,000 page views with them.
That sounds familiar. Yeah. I know back in the day, I got my first site on Mediavine, and then they allowed another site of mine on Mediavine. I think it was at 10 or 15,000 sessions or something.
Yeah, that was the old way.
Man, it's great. I can't. I wish those days had come back. Yeah. So, but AdThrive is pretty generous if you have a site on AdThrive. So, and you have a site on AdThrive, it sounds like. So you're able to, Do you think you'll be accepted into one of those with some of the changes you've made recently?
I expect to, because AdThrive didn't give me any clear information, but the person at Mediavine told me which posts were the problem. So,
okay. Now, why are you making a switch? You're on Ezoic right now. Is there something special about one of those two? Is there a reason for the switch?
I'm a big fan of Ezoic for small sites and people starting out, because in my experience, it always pays more than AdSense. I'm not a fan of their premium model. I don't like having to pay to get more money. And based on people I have talked to who are in the same niche, who are with both AdThrive and Mediavine, without paying for premium, my RPM should double. So right now, my ePMV with Ezoic, which is based on sessions, is just over $20. I think it was $20.49 last month. And people I've talked to who are with Mediavine and AdThrive are getting $30 to $50.
Okay. So you have boots on the ground giving you data.
Yeah. Basically. So basically, I feel like if I can get on one of those, the income of the site will immediately double.
Okay. A bit off topic, but I'm just curious. How do you know so many people in the same space as your website?
I just got lucky, I guess.
Okay. I just thought maybe that was part of your strategy or something.
No, I just got lucky, I guess.
I have two sites, a couple sites, and I don't know anybody in those spaces. I'm just curious. That's kind of smart.
No. I mean, I've been in this industry so long too. So, I've become friends with some people. So
yeah, fair enough. Birds of a feather flock together, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're gonna take this site and change it from being info only to being a hybrid of info and affiliate. Would you do another all info site? Do you think that that's a good model going forward, or are you really more interested in the hybrid approach? Or are you thinking going forward in your portfolio, you're going to kind of stick with your tried and true affiliate play?
I actually really like the idea of building the strong foundation with just the informational posts and then getting a site on Mediavine or AdThrive and then focusing on the affiliate income. But I think next time when I start a site with that focus, I'm going to be smarter about picking something that has a higher RPM. Like, the $30 to $50 is pretty good. But I know from being in these groups that there are people making $80 RPM, with Mediavine and AdThrive. And so I would target those niches more.
Without giving away, too much, what niches how do you evaluate niches for higher RPM? So when you're doing niche research, are there any ways to look at what niches have higher RPMs?
In the Mediavine Facebook group, there's always people talking about Q4 RPMs, for instance, or people saying, those of you who got to six figures, what's your RPM and how did you do it? And so people share a lot of information. There's also the Just Start subreddit on Reddit where people have shared some information, as well as the blogging subreddit. So I just pay attention to a lot of different places like that. And whenever I see someone saying that they're in a niche that makes a high RPM, then I write it down for future reference.
Yeah. I mean, it's really smart. I mean, it can make or break the difference in a lot of money. Like you talked about,
Yeah.
There's some niches that are only at maybe $10, $15 RPMs. And then some all the way, I guess, up to $80. I mean, that's eightfold difference. I mean, all things aren't equal. Maybe it's harder to rank for some of that content, but nonetheless, I mean, eightfold is something to pay attention to.
Well, I used to have a site in the gaming niche, and I got into it not knowing how poor the ad display rates are. It's like, I'm lucky if it made like $2 for the RPM.
Oh my gosh.
That's terrible.
That's rough. That's really rough. You mentioned in your case study report that you actually started this site on AdSense before going to Ezoic.
Right.
What was the difference in AdSense versus Ezoic?
I don't remember the exact increase. I think it more than doubled, though. I know it's in one of my updates, but it was substantial.
It was a lot. It was substantially better. Yeah. And okay, so that's good. Let me ask you about, again, kind of reflecting on this first year. How important do you think the age domain was, and not building any links throughout the year versus a previous site, maybe in your portfolio, where you started, like you talked about, on a fresh domain, but then put some of an emphasis on building links throughout that first year?
The age domain had the site making money by the second month.
Wow.
And, I've been in this game so long, that used to be the norm, I feel like, for sites. And as SEO has evolved and more people have gotten into making sites and stuff, when you start with the fresh domain, it doesn't happen that fast anymore, usually.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's for not just money, but traffic.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, like I said, I think I recorded, like, you were getting almost 3,000 sessions in month 2. It looks like. I wrote it down. All right. So next steps for the site, you kind of mentioned a bit about how you're going to focus on affiliate content for this. You have 400 articles. What's the next year look like?
This niche is pretty broad. It's not too broad, but I think you could easily triple the amount of content if you wanted to. It's not really a niche that I'm interested in keeping a site in the long term. So I suspect I'll only hold on to it for maybe another year, and then do a 6-figure exit. My initial goal was 5,000 a month, but if that takes more than another year, then I'll go ahead and flip it before then.
How do you know when it's time to sell? What do you use to evaluate that?
Usually I like to sell when a site is still growing. I don't want to have a site hit a plateau before I go to sell it, because I want it to be super attractive to buyers. I also don't want to exhaust all of the potential of the site, because I want someone to see it and think, oh, I can make some easy wins here. So
yeah, that makes sense. Are you doing any social media on this site? Are you doing Pinterest or YouTube or anything like that?
Based on my competitors in this niche, Pinterest, YouTube, and Facebook are all great for it. However, the only thing I've actually had time to focus on was Pinterest. And it's getting a reasonable amount of traffic from Pinterest, even though Pinterest has changed their algorithm in the past, I guess, maybe 12 to 18 months. So it, compared to my other sites, is not getting as much traffic as it would have if I'd done it sooner. But I think it's maybe at about 10% of the traffic right now, 5 to 10% is coming in from there. So
I was going to ask you about that. I mean, it's been talked about in fits and starts, like Pinterest's algorithm has definitely changed, and it's gotten a lot harder to, get traction there. Would you recommend, people, like, generally speaking, even spend the time on building out a Pinterest traffic source these days?
Yeah, even though you won't get as much right now as you used to get from Pinterest, I'm still a big fan of diversifying your traffic simply because you never know what's going to happen with a Google update. Even if you're doing everything by the books, you can still get hit and not recover to the next update. So definitely try to diversify traffic.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, that's great. I mentioned at the outset, but for people who want to kind of follow along and kind of get caught up, like you do a great job of monthly providing these updates. And you make it really easy to just go back and kind of nerd out on 12 months worth of posts there. And it's at skipblast.com. Are you going to keep doing updates on this going forward?
Yeah, I'm going to keep updating it until I sell it so that people kind of see the potential. Originally, when I started this out, I was only going to spend like $5,000 plus whatever the income was. But then things were indexing so quickly and the traffic was growing so fast. I was like, no, I have to hit this hard. So I just kind of want to show people what can happen, because a lot of the people who do these age domain case studies, they're going pure affiliate. They're hitting it with way more content per month than I am right now. And that's really not attainable for most people, I feel like.
Right.
So my original goal was to show what anyone can do. And I know I've spent $19,000 in a year, which isn't attainable for a lot of people. And I understand that, but I feel like it still kind of gives people a good example of what they can achieve.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, 5,000 and 19,000, they're very different numbers.
Yeah.
But 5,000 is very approachable for someone to save and use to get started. I would venture that I think a lot of people might be a little fearful about starting their first site with an age domain just because if they get it wrong, there's enough challenges in starting a new site. Would you recommend people start their first site on an age domain, given how effective it was for you? But so given that it can be hard to evaluate those things for your first, when you're kind of a beginner.
If someone wants to start out on an age domain, I would recommend, like, if they're really set on it, to not spend more than $1,000 on it, just because it can go wrong so fast. I always tell people don't start it on an age domain if you don't know what you're doing. I actually have a course where I go through how I vet age domains. So if you get training like that, or if you get training from anyone else who knows what they're doing and you're starting out, or someone's like maybe mentoring you, then I think it would be okay. But I would hate for someone to go out on their own the first time, have a complete failure, and then just abandon building sites completely.
Right. Yeah. Because correct me if I'm wrong here, but even if you vet it perfectly and it checks all the boxes, there's still a chance it might not, perform all that well for you in terms of.
Right. Yeah. I've actually had that happen more than once on age domains.
Oh, lovely. Just great. So even when we know it's a good age domain, it still might not work.
Yeah. You just never know. So, yeah.
Out of curiosity, what'd you do with all the content, or with that, in that use case, what'd you do?
I just 301 everything to an existing site that was broad enough to handle it as a new content silo. And it actually worked out better that way, lifting that existing site, than it did as a standalone site.
So you had a site that you started on an age domain, wasn't working, took the content, 301'd it, and 301 the age domain to an existing, and it worked well.
Yes.
Well, all hope's not lost, I suppose.
Right. Yeah.
Just didn't go according to plan, but what does in our industry?
Exactly.
Before we talk a little bit about what you're doing at Skip Blast, any just thoughts? Again, 17 sites in the business full-time since 2008. Like, I think you're a great person to ask what's working now, what insights today are working today that are maybe a bit unique or a bit time sensitive to right now.
I feel like there's been a trend in recent years of people writing longer and longer and longer content. And I think that's only gotten worse with tools like Surfer, where people are like, oh, the average is 1,800 words, so I'm going to do 1,900. I'm writing shorter and shorter content, and it's ranking every time. So I think people are working harder than they need to be. So
shorter content for the win. Boy, that would make all of our lives a lot easier.
Yeah, right.
And I'm having a problem with my biggest site and my number one article that drives, the most traffic. It's one of these kind of listicles. So it's like 27 blah, blah, blahs, and then a competitor will update their article and it'll be 29 blah, blah, blahs. And so it's been going on for a couple of years now. So we're up into like the 150s now. And I'm like, when is this going to end?
Right. Yeah.
Like, do I need to keep just the 151, or at some point, can I just go back to 25 and then win with that? It's kind of a bit of a race to the bottom, except we're going up in the terms of the number.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting. Transitioning, let's talk about Skip Blast. I mean, I don't know how you have time for Skip Blast with 17 sites, but you have a lot of time, or you put a lot of time into that. What are the different things that you kind of feature on Skip Blast? We've talked about the case studies, but there's a lot of other things that are there.
Basically just random things that I've tested that no one else seems to really be talking about. Then I'll just write a short blog post on that. One thing I did earlier this year is I was using the big data analytics in Ezoic to try to totally change my content marketing plan for one of my sites that I had with them. And what I was doing was chasing high RPM topics. So I used big data analytics to see what type of content was getting me the best RPM or EMPV from them. And then I went and did totally new keyword research, made an entire topic cluster on that to see if I could get more, money from Ezoic basically. And so I identified, I think it was 3 types of articles that I'd been writing as the top. And so I went through each of those 3 types, made new content for each of them to see what the clear winner was. And that actually substantially increased both the overall revenue of the site and the EPMB.
That's a really good point, because you typically for a site will just look at the overall EPMV, right?
Right.
Or EMPV, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's RPM, but generally speaking, RPM, EPMV, same kind of concepts. And you look at overall site EPMV, RPM, but when you drill in, which I rarely do, but when you drill in, it's kind of mind blowing. Because you're like, oh, my site is a $30 average, but there's some that get 70 and there's some that get 5, and it averages. And I think, is it most get around in this example, the $30 mark, or do you find a lot of outliers and then you found it really grew because there are enough that are at the top there? Or, I'm just curious. That's a really fascinating way to go about it.
Yeah, this particular site was earning like closer to $10 for its RPM when I started. And when I finished with it, it was just about 20. So I managed to double the overall RPM for the site just by doing that. And the thing was, the content I found that was performing the best for the RPM was what I had the fewest type of articles of. So, but I did add a lot of content. So one of those types of articles, I added 50 new articles just for that, to build a complete cluster.
And it was a complete cluster around a topic that you saw doing very well in RPM.
Right.
And so clearly it was an RPM based
strategy.
Yeah, an RPM based strategy that's really cool. That's a really great hack.
You can do it with Mediavine and AdsDrive as well. I mean, they all tell you which articles perform the best.
Do you find that that's often the case where it's topic specific for RPM dollar amounts?
Yeah. So in this particular site, the best performing articles. So one of them had like a legal slant. So if you were maybe writing about bike laws or something like that, one was travel related, and the other one focused on luxury products. So a higher price demographic, which, would have common sense, but still.
It does make sense. Yeah. Yeah. I always thought it was maybe more niche dependent, but not necessarily topical dependent. Right. That's really interesting.
I think it's probably both.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
There's probably some of both involved. And then you also have some courses on Skip Blast as well. I know I was looking at your Hero course earlier, but you have a couple of different courses. Which way is it? Do you have like a flagship one, or is there kind of a more popular one than any other?
Actually, the age domain one is running neck and neck with the one on success focused niche selection. It's kind of like expanding on the AdThrive JSON strategy, as well as a few other strategies that I use. I actually set out this year planning to release at least 12 courses, 1 a month.
Of course you did.
But the house that I'm renting here in Vegas, I've made like a really big closet in my recording studio, and there's no air conditioning vent in there. So for like the entire summer, I wasn't able to do any courses. So I'm playing catch up right now.
Got to wait for it to cool down a bit. Has it cooled down yet a little bit? I guess it's probably started to cool down a bit in Vegas.
It was like 66 this morning. So yeah.
Oh, good. Well, yeah. Okay. Recording studio is open for business.
That's right. I'm working on a course right now, actually, on topic clusters. So
okay. I love it. We've talked about so many things you have courses on, so that's great. Anything you think is important for the Project Tartarus we didn't talk about, or that I didn't ask you about that would be great to share?
I can't really think of anything. I think the most important takeaway for me is how different the income is if you spend a year on making a pure affiliate play versus a pure informational play.
Yeah, that is fascinating. And again, just to recap it, you're making about $800 or $900 a month right now,
Right.
a year in on an
Hmm.
niche domain,
Right.
on a pure content play with 400 articles.
Right.
And you were thinking you'd be in the several thousands if you had taken
Right.
the same budget, the same age domain, and published the same amount of content, all affiliate
Right.
focused.
Yeah. And I feel like on this particular podcast, there was a guy a few months back who had done just that, focused on a pure affiliate play with an ODYS domain. And I think he sold for mid six figures, if I recall correctly. So that
Man,
kind of shows you the difference. And I think he was just over a year with his site.
that is truly the power of getting the age domain right.
Yeah.
And then going for the highest paying type of content, I guess
Right.
you could
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
and moving on. Well, again, Shauna, it's been a real pleasure having you. And for people, if they want to get in touch with you, is the best place skipblast.com?
Yes. Yes. That's definitely it.
Okay. And clearly you're very active there. And with more to come, it sounds like. Now that winter is here, we're going to just expect to see a whole bevy of content courses hit there.
Yeah, I have a lot of catch up to do.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining. And
Yeah.
thanks again.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing.